Hello, thanks so much for coming to my talk today. I really wish that I had been able to be there. In fact, I was planning on attending SIGCSE until the very last minute when my institute issued some requirements that I stay home. So thank you again for coming. So my name is Layla Esper. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at Carleton College. And to really set the stage, I think it makes sense for me to tell you a little bit about the institution where I work. So, Carleton College is a small liberal arts college in Northfield, Minnesota, which is about 45 minutes south of Minneapolis. So, we're a relatively small institution with about 2,000 students that are all undergraduate students. What's more is about 80% of our students eventually attend graduate school. So, because it's a small school, we have a relatively small faculty, about 200 full-time faculty. Our growing computer science department currently has 9 tenure-track faculty, and this means that most faculty are really the only expert in their field at the college. So I know a lot of students that when I got there, I was their first exposure to what computational biology actually meant. And so there are a number of institutions that are similar to Carleton that exist. And so a question that I have been really thinking about was how do we expand participation at students like Carleton for students that have not had exposure to computational biology in the past. And so what I want to talk to you about today was a workshop that I hosted in the fall of 2018 called the 2018 Undergraduate Computational Biology Workshop. It was really aimed at exposing undergrads to this novel subfield of computer science. So really what I'm going to talk to you about today is tell you a little bit about the background and the inspiration for this workshop, a number of the details about it and outcomes and resources that are available, and sort of what the lessons were from this for us looking forward. And so I hope that this is potentially useful to you in two different ways. I think a lot of the things that we learned are not specific to computational biology and could potentially be applied to other subfields of computer science. And then for those of you that are interested in computational biology, there's a lot of resources that we put together as part of this workshop that are available to the wider general audience. So really to get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the inspiration was for this workshop. So in 2015, I actually attended a workshop at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, where you all are now. And so this workshop was attended by students, faculty, and staff all from the area, and it was really targeted more towards biologists. And so this workshop was organized by Sarah Schack, who's a professor at Reed College, and her postdoc at the time, Maya Benner. And the aim of this workshop really was to introduce the world of publicly available data and software for performing bioinformatic and genomic analysis. So this was like a really great experience for me, and it gave me an opportunity to see different faculty that came in and each taught a short module related to some area that they were interested in. So in fact, all of the data from this workshop or information about it is still available online. And it covered a really wide range of topics, from gene annotation to running different tools to identify different types of genomic variants. There also were a couple of sort of crash courses at the beginning that allowed students that maybe didn't have a very computational background to get some basic experience using the terminal, the command line, and then a separate one on using R. And this workshop really got me thinking of, could I use a similar structure but to help expand student exposure to computational biology, but in particular thinking about students that are interested in computer science rather than students that had a direct interest in biology. So this really then led to this workshop that I hosted in 2018. And so let's talk a little bit about the details of this workshop. So it was a 1.5-day workshop that was held in Northfield, Minnesota, where Carleton College is. It was free to any students that wanted to attend it. Our one requirement was that students needed to have an equivalent of a CS1 background. There was no biology requirement whatsoever. In fact, students were encouraged, you just needed to have an interest in how computation can be applied to important problems in biology. And so we really focus this around as the workshop will give students a hands-on introduction to how computer science can be used to help important problems in biology. So what was the actual format of the workshop? So there were 6 different 90-minute modules that were each created and led by a different module leader. And so what is a module? A module contained a background section that really introduced the problem that was under consideration, and then a hands-on component that gave students the opportunity to directly work on some problem-solving skills or some aspect of this problem. One of the other things that I tried to do with this was the modules covered a really diverse array of different topics that all fall into this general category of computational biology. So one of the really cool things about putting this together was getting the opportunity to invite 6 different module leaders to come create these different modules. And so what we ended up with was a really great group of 6 people. So they came from 6 different liberal arts colleges. So we had Rika Anderson from Carleton, Anna Ritz from Reed College, Amit Soni from Swarthmore, Anya Vastanar from Grinnell, Katie Welsh from Rhodes, and Gatirian Sango from Macalester. So 4 of them were in computer science departments, 2 were in biology departments, although one of them has a computer science background. It also was an incredibly diverse group of module leaders, which is something that we actually weren't explicitly trying to do, and was really happy to realize that the group of people that we ended up with. So when I was asking different module leaders to participate in this, I sort of pitched it as put together a 90-minute thing that you might expect to be something you could teach on the last day of an intro class. And they came back with such a great set of topics. So here's an overview of the topics that were covered. So this ranged from things like looking at identifying candidate regulators from an interaction network. So this leads into some graph theory problems. We had a module that was looking at peptide and protein interaction. So this used the Galaxy framework and provided an overview of how we might do this from tandem mass spec data. Our 3rd module was really looking at mitochondrial DNA and comparing tumor and normal matched samples and allowing students to get the basic experience of modifying and dealing with BAM files and a bunch of different tools, including SAM tools and VARSCAN2, to be able to actually identify sets of candidate mutations in real mitochondrial DNA. Our 4th module was really looking at some of the basics of machine learning, and then seeing how these could be applied to a wide variety of different biological problems. Our 5th module was really looking in the world of metagenomics, and in particular this problem of binning. And so this allows for the study of life without actually doing cultures in the lab. And then our final module was a little bit of a different take on what computational biology means, and looked at how we combine problems that are more inspired from biology by exploring a predator-prey model and looking at different dynamics that occur within this space. So what I really hope you take away from this is we ended up with a really diverse set of modules. So I don't have time to go into the details of all of these, so I'm just going to use this first one, Finding Friends in Molecular Interaction Networks, as a way of showing you the types of information that are available as part of these modules. So first off, all of these and all other information about the workshop were available on our workshop website. So on this website over on the left, you can see there are links to all the different modules, as well as a bunch of other logistical information, and this was sent out to all participants in advance. So if we look at any particular module, we ended up with a shared set of categories that each one had information for. So including things from the summary, any presentation materials, and then the explicit hands-on exercises. A number of different modules ended up with associated materials or files. So this could include things like cheat sheets for different libraries that were being used, or in some cases specific data sets that were going to be analyzed. A list of any program or software requirements in order to complete this module, and then finally some advanced material that includes things like readings or things that are for students that found it really interesting and wanted to learn a little bit more about the topic. So if we dive into this Finding Friends in Molecular Interaction Networks, So the main idea behind this was we're introducing a computational problem of trying to identify candidate regulators of a specific protein of interest using a molecular interaction network. And so this was really broken into two smaller sections. So the first section was all about working with graphs. And so this was really sort of tying this back to the fact that these students were going to be students that had computer science backgrounds. And so in this section, they got a chance to sort of learn about this particular problem that we were interested in sort of a generic graph theory sense. So introducing a variety of different computational problems in the sense that we are interested in thinking about. This also gave them the opportunity to work with some very particular tools, so the Network X module and then GraphSpace, which is used within the computational biology space for looking at these types of networks. And so one really cool thing was the hands-on component then for this first part was in this tool called Replit, which allows students to use just a web browser in order to access starter code and actually write code, and has made it a really nice way to start off this module. So the first half was all thinking about the computer science problem, and then the second part, we really related this then back to the biological problem that we were interested in, so in particular working with molecular interaction networks. So in this particular case, we were looking at protein-protein interaction networks, and again, to try and solve a very particular problem. And again, finally taking this particular biological problem and relating it back to the original computational problem that the students were originally presented with. And again, there was a hands-on component that went with the second piece. So like I mentioned, these hands-on components were done using this interactive programming environment called Replit. So this allows you to build a workspace where you're given a container on a virtual machine where you can run your code sandboxed. And so we found this was really nice because it meant we didn't have to download any special software onto the computers. Students were working on their own laptops. They didn't have to have their own specialized software. They just needed to have a browser. And we were able to effectively and efficiently give them starter code and instructions all in one place. So what you're seeing on the screen here is somewhat similar to what the students would see, where on the left they would have their starter code and then a place to be able to run that code, and on the right-hand side they're seeing these nice set of instructions that include graphics and links and other important pieces of information. So this is just one example of what one of these 6 different modules look like. If you're interested in the details of any of these particular modules, they are all currently freely available at the link to the website, which is down at the bottom of this page. All right, so that's a lot about what the workshop itself actually looked like, but who were actually the participants in this? So we ended up with 32 undergraduate participants, plus one parent who happened to be on campus that weekend. So the participants ranged through first years, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. We ended up with the largest group being sophomores. We ended up with students from 3 different schools, although they were largely dominated by Carleton. We suspect that this had to do with the fact that the workshop occurred on Carleton's campus, and it actually seemed pretty challenging to coordinate carpools for students from some of the other schools. We ended up with a large chunk of students from Grinnell because they were able to put together a carpool where we ended up fewer from McAllister, even though it was a closer located institution, but students had more issues being able to actually get transportation to campus. So we also polled these students to find out what their major or intended major was. And so maybe not surprisingly, we got a wide range of different STEM majors, including computer science, biology, math, statistics, chemistry, physics, and of course some undecideds. We also importantly asked students about their previous computational biology experience and found that largely the students had no experience or minimal experience prior to the workshop. This was actually something that we made sure to tell the students about at the very beginning of the workshop as a way of helping reduce anxiety. And in fact, one student commented explicitly about this to me afterwards, that this was really helpful to make them feel more at home in the workshop setting. So our main goal with this workshop was we wanted to give students a hands-on introduction to how computer science can be used to help answer important problems in biology. And so the question was, did we achieve this goal? So we used post-workshop surveys to try and assess how well we did at this. In these surveys, we asked students a number of questions, and in these questions, we asked them to rate some statement in terms of likelihood. So here are just a few of the results that we got from this. So we asked them about their likelihood to pursue future opportunities in computational biology. We had 2/3 of the students either agree or strongly disagree, with the rest sort of remaining undecided. We saw even stronger results if we're asking them about if they are now aware of ways that computation can be combined with biology, with all students either strongly agreeing or agreeing to this statement. And lastly, we asked them if it exposed them to novel and exciting applications that involved both computation and biology, with 60% of the students strongly agreeing, and all students either strongly agreeing or agree. So this is really exciting. I think it showed that we were definitely achieving some of these goals with the students. We also asked whether or not we had good outcomes for the module leaders as well. So we also assessed this through surveys after the workshop. And so in particular, some of the results are shown here, where we asked module leaders if they would use modules created by other module leaders for the workshop, again in their own future classes or otherwise. And we found that 2/3 of the module leaders either agreed or strongly agreed with this. We also asked them if this helped them to expand their computational biology professional network, and we saw a really strong response here, where 5 of the 6 module leaders said they strongly agree. And so this really sort of demonstrated to us that we thought we were definitely starting to achieve some of these goals that we set out with this workshop. So afterwards, we had done these surveys and really wanted to sit down and think about, well, what does this mean for the future? Are there things or lessons that we've learned from this that we can apply for future workshops in computational biology or future workshops in any subfield related to computer science? And so in order to think about that, I really want to break down to things that we thought went really well and things that we thought should be changed in future offerings. So things that we thought went really well. So we actually hired student beta testers to test out all of these modules before the workshop actually happened. So these testers actually went into the actual room where the workshop occurred to make sure that the right software was installed and that they were able to run it. What's more is we found that they gave us really good feedback about actually being able to understand the instructions and sort of giving us a glimpse of how students might actually interact with this. The module testers actually represented a really wide range of student backgrounds, and I think that was actually really helpful for trying to sort of pitch and set the modules up for a wide range of different students. The wide breadth of modules that we got, I think, were also a real strength of the workshop. And then lastly, the 1.5 day length, which occurred over a weekend, also seemed like a good length to do this. We realized undergraduate students are balancing trying to do all of their work for classes at the same time as devoting a large portion of their weekend to this, and we found that this gave a nice balance. There were a number of other lessons that we did learn, things that were challenging. So as I mentioned earlier, getting students from some of the other colleges to attend was a challenge. I think in the future, picking a location that might be more centralized or be closer to a larger number of institutions would be helpful for this. We also had some amount of technical difficulties, and I think this really led to this trade-off of tools or parts of modules that can be done online using just a web browser versus needing to have particular software installed. So one example of this is one of our modules required a very particular GPU, and this ended up causing a lot of headaches and a lot of issues that we got a lot of help from ITS getting installed in advance. And so really thinking about what are the requirements in terms of hardware and software in depth beforehand, and letting your modules and leaders know that in advance would have been really helpful. Lastly, I think in the future it might be nice to sort of have a variety of different length or depth of modules. So here we said you just have to have CS1 as a background. We ended up with students with a whole range of students that had basically completed the entire computer science major to students that had just taken intro. And so being able to point them to different modules or different pieces of modules based on their background would have been really helpful. So in conclusion, what I've told you about today was a workshop that we hosted about computational biology that was really aimed at trying to expose undergraduates to this novel subfield of computer science. And so something like this isn't possible without the work of a lot of people. So I really want to thank all of the module leaders that participated in this. This wouldn't have happened without them, as well as the beta testers and workshop helpers, administrative assistants, technical assistants, inspiration, and importantly, our sources of funding. So all of the resources for the workshop are available at this link at the very bottom of the screen here. And lastly, I just want to close by saying I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about this. I really wish I could be there to answer these questions, but if you have them, please feel free to send me an email, and please check out the resources that are available. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of SIGCSE.